Yeah, the background things are interesting. I see Catherine walking out into the bush and disappearing, and then back, he's back into it. It's great the way it works. Yeah. Okay. So for all of you who haven't been here before, and there's a few of you, this is really free form, really relaxed. No inhibitions at all. Just let it all hang out. No comments. Yeah.
Spoken like a true baby boomer.
Yeah. Why do they use different terms these days? I don't know.
I think they probably do. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. And we've got a few guides here, a few people who are well and truly through the gate, and so there's lots of resources for anybody for anything.
Can I say something?
Yes, please. Just before you do, don't ask permission and don't apologize.
Okay.
I'm particularly looking at you,
Okay.
Ted. Just if there's a minuscule pause, just jump in.
Yeah, no problem. I was watching last week and it was very beautiful, really. I'm sorry, how do you say your name? Jahira?
I just call it.
Yes, hi.
Hi, so you, I think it was last week that I was watching that you had an experience. Is that correct? I really just, I felt that because when it was so strong and it just destroyed my reality in so many ways. And I just wanted to tell you that I wish somebody told me this 11 years ago, that if it gets worse, it's okay. If you go backwards, it's okay. It's supposed to be like that. You're supposed to have this beautiful moment that can last 3 months, 1 year, and it may last forever. I don't know. Your experience may be different than mine, but it's okay. Like whatever is happening is okay. There is this big that you're going to lose whatever you have now. And maybe it does go backwards a little bit, but you're human, it's just everything feels so flowy and beautiful and lovey, and that's okay. Enjoy it. I'm not telling you not to enjoy it, but eventually you come back to yourself, and you're going to say, wow, I can't believe I am this person and that I'm doing things. And I said this thing to this one person, and you're going to look at yourself and you're going to say, why did I do all of these things? And that's okay. It's okay. Just let everything be okay. I just really wanted to tell you that because I spent so many years without a group like this. And that was a huge fucking mistake to not have a group of people around me. And that's the one thing I do. I don't regret anything because I'm exactly where I need to be, but that's all I have to say. So I wish you luck, and you're in the right place. I really wish you good luck.
Thank you. I totally feel that because I mean, even just since in the last week, I've seen how, I was just like, I got it, and like, I mean, already, like, I'm so appreciative to Vince and Jeff for helping me and Todd, because there have already been moments where, there was like a reaction again, and I was like, shit, like I'm losing it.
I'm a person, I'm a person.
Yeah.
This is what it is.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
I wasn't thinking that, like, I was definitely identified with something, but I think that, with the Fetter work, when they talk about the first 3 Fetters, right, and then the fourth and the fifth, and how the fourth and the fifth has to do with desire and ill will. So it's kind of like, I do kind of need some guiding through those parts still, even though I don't think I could ever go back to really being totally identified, but yes, I appreciate the group support too. Sure.
Yeah. I just want to say there was that fear for me that you're going to go backwards to how it was before, and that's just fear. So it's okay.
Yeah, we can may or may not be right, but one way to look at it is that doubts might come back for a period. I mean, my experience was that about 3 or 4 months into the beginning of this, doubts turned up, and there was a period where I readjusted to realize that those doubts were just thoughts, and then they went away and they weren't there again. But it's different for everybody. Some people it doesn't happen, and some people it does, you know. Yeah. And that's great to have support if it does. Yeah.
Yeah, my experience was 3 months, like you said. It was also 3 months for me. It was like 3 months of just bliss and everything is great. And then I fell right into this deep depression that I didn't get out for like 5 years. I don't mean to scare.
Yeah.
My experience was a lot different from a lot of people's, and I understand that now, but I had a lot of trauma in the past. So that's what happened with me. But
Yeah.
everything, it is different. It manifests differently in so many different people. You know, some people have no trauma and they're just lovey-dovey, and other people just, you know, it's tough for them.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we must realize that we've all got quite a few years of conditioning happened, and habits are pretty strong. I often use stories about neuroscience, and one I've made up, I don't know how accurate it is that we establish new neural pathways in the brain when this happens, and we've actually moved from our left brain to our right brain, and with a lot of our perspectives and perceivings. But the old neural pathways, they never really completely go. You know, it's like the brain says, well, I'll just keep this here in case I ever need it again. And so often it doesn't take a lot to get that left brain stuff happening again. But if we recognize it, yeah, we can switch away from it. But that's just a story. It's convenient. It's a useful story for me. Yeah. Okay, I don't want to dominate. I don't want to keep talking. I'm here for you guys as well as for me. So,
well, I'll just address the topic briefly. You know, mostly, I'd say my life is wonderful, never been better. There's almost never any reactivity, anxiety, suffering, but under stress, those things do come out, and they don't last very long is the thing, because the illusions are so obvious. You know, I think when you've seen clearly enough that everything is a thought constructed illusion, then, you know, it's hard to identify with it or take it seriously. So I think, you know, there's no like enlightenment here, but there's a resilience toward that state. There's a tendency to you know, recover quickly.
yeah. Yeah, I was puzzled for a while with when an old habit of frustration would turn up, and it would even be more intense than it used to be. But whereas before it used to morph into anger and hang around for quite some time, the new way for a long time was that it would appear, it would be very intense, but it would be gone usually within a few seconds. It would just, it would be seen to happen and just be dropped. But not even as a doing, it just happened like that. So it was very, very short-lived. For a long, long time that happened. And then I discovered the Fetter model, and yeah, that changed it a bit. Yeah.
I suppose there would be a sort of realization, something like, why should things have to be as I think they should be?
Yeah. Well, if we suffer the illusion of control, I guess we carry that with us, don't we?
Yeah, I had frustration on my list of things to investigate at some stage or other.
Vince, did you have to do like the inquiry with the Fetters, or did you just come across them and say, "Oh yeah, that makes sense"? Did you actually do the questioning of staying in the gap and turning it into, what do they say when they say, what do I want to be the case? And then they say, you have to make a statement of, they don't, this is what I'm expecting, and this is what they're not doing. Did you have to do that work, or did it just, were you like, oh, this all makes sense?
No. I had lost any impulse for seeking for a long time. I was like 10 years, and then when I discovered the Fetter group or the Fetter model, and I realized that there was still a bit more work to do, but I don't know whether I'm just lazy or what, but no, I never actually did that formal stuff of looking for the gap and doing that kind of stuff. It was like osmosis. I just recognized there was more work to do, and that was almost enough to do it. It's changed. It still actually happens now, but very, very rarely, very occasionally. And before the Fetter work, when that frustration did come, and then it went very quickly, it was like, okay, that's just what happened, and there was no suffering as a result, so I didn't see it as a big issue. But somehow recognizing that I was still being triggered because there was still stuff that hadn't been resolved was almost enough to do it. Yeah. Some people need the structure, but if I don't know if I'm being a bit pedantic here, but the idea of doing just feeds right into the illusion of control and choice and decisions and all of that. And so it just appeared to be a bit of a paradox to do something to fix what was happening. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was listening to what's his name? Oh, Kenneth Madden today. Or no, not Kenneth. It's the other. What's the other guy's name? Andreas today. I was listening to him, and he, he's very like, he just says it like it is. Like, this is it. There is no you, and it's like, I. I could see now like how I would struggle with that then. Like I totally get it now, but I didn't get it. I didn't get it then. I was like, but I don't see that. I don't see how that is. And like so for so long I listened to him and Kenneth and Tim Kliss, and like I didn't see it. And it wasn't until I started coming to this group, and then I talked to Todd, that, and like I mean, I think that like, yeah, like you guys kind of made me do something. Like Todd instigated me to inquire a certain way. And then you guys were talking about this and that, like didn't tell me to do things, but had me look at it in a different way. And like, I don't know. It was kind of I had to kind of look. So that was a doing that I mean, obviously it all just happened spontaneously, but yeah, I could see the difference between like how Andres just talks about the simplicity of this, and everybody comes to his meetings and is like, what? And they ask questions and they more questions. And but then like the difference between that and this, you know, there is a somewhat of a doing, even if it's spontaneous and it's just happening, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's if we just look at doing, we at a social level or cultural level, doing is like the outcome of intention. But before we wake up, people will believe that intention is something that they summon up at will. But the reality is that doing and intention are what thought says after the fact, always. So when something happens, thought will claim ownership. I did that. Aren't I good? Or something, you know?
This reminds me of the Leavitt experiment. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. This guy who was sort of looking at the intention to do something and when it happened, and looked at the sort of brain waves and all that kind of thing, and discovered that the body, if you like, decided to do it before the so-called person decided to do it.
Yeah. Yep.
It's only about 300 milliseconds late, always.
Yeah. There's one out there where the researcher has got the person in the MRI machine, and he can tell what they're going to choose when it's a binary situation, a yes or a no. He can tell something like 6 seconds before they know, just by looking at the brain waves. So yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah.
I think
I've heard a Benjamin Leavitt quote: "We don't have free will; we have free won't." I don't know whether that's true, but it's fun.
Yeah.
I have a sense. I'm just curious if that connects or not. My sense is that we can see often an intentionality that goes before actions, but I wouldn't, it's not like a separate person. It's not like the fantasy of a separate person that decide now it's going to happen, but whether it's on me or other people or my dog, we can see a state that we could call intentionality. Right? We can see somebody's angry, or we can see somebody's just about to do something. So there's a kind of an intentionality there, but it's not an intentionality in the sense of like a separate person inside who is deciding now to do that. It's like a state of the person or the being. Yeah, just wondering.
I agree with that entirely. Yeah, that's the whole key to it, isn't it? There's, you know, the body can do things like before we developed a sort of separate sense, you know, when we were 18 months old or something. We still did things. Animals do things, robots do things, and they manage without separate selves. So it seems pretty obvious. So that's the only problem, really. But it's a stuck way of thinking.
I think about if you're in the road and a bus was coming, you jumped out of the road, out of the way of the bus, and then afterwards you'd probably have a pretty good story about that, about how you thought to do it or something.
Yeah,
Would
well, it
happen
would be
without any real thought.
it would be entertaining, wouldn't it, for your friends to, you can tell them how you evaded the bus, you know, and managed to survive so heroically.
Jeff, why do you say that that needs to come in? You mentioned before that the I does need to come into existence for us to. It's not something that we can just skip over.
Oh, I think what you're referring to is, you know, it would be possible for me to sit here and stare at the wall and just starve to death. Everybody who's alive is, you know, engaging in the world in a kind of a purposeful way. And I think there's a role for that, but the problem is believing there's anything solid to it. Like this is all just happening. You know, and then there are a lot of stories about it that create this illusory self and world, and you know, all the stories. But I mean, practically speaking, we talk about Fetter's like subject-object duality, and so like I don't walk into closed doors, and you know, when I drive somewhere, I'm tracking the route and all that stuff. So I mean, like, you know, there are many practical things that require some degree of subject-object duality, you know, craving and aversion, but at a deeper level, they're all illusions. They're all stories we make up to navigate a world that's constructed in mind and thought. So yeah, I did for a while wonder why or how it was possible that people say, well, you know, this completely drops away and, you know, we're done with it. And I honestly, I don't buy it. I think everybody, I think as Jim Newman, for example, says, anything can show up. It's just not solid. You know, it's not what you think it is. It's, you know, and in social interactions, I'm not always, but often I'm a person in some sense, you know, like I'm selfing and I'm following their storyline, and maybe I'm recalling a storyline and I'm playing as if there's a self. And I know all along it's an illusion and all this stuff is just happening. And I'm even having thoughts, well, I'm really enjoying this. And good feelings are there, and it's great. And I wouldn't like give those up. I just don't believe they're real. And I noticed after you know, meeting a friend and having very warm feelings, say, then I go home and that's the end of that. Well, like there's no continuing satisfaction outside of a story. And if the story is there, I can enjoy it. I can have thoughts that say I enjoy this, or I can let it go, or and anything could happen, you know, it's all fine. It's all perfectly okay. I don't have to judge like, oh, you know, I'm selfing again, or you know, like I'm pretending there's subject-object duality and I know that's not really there, and like those are just additional thoughts. So I think of it as like freedom. It's not it's not a state where all the fetters are broken all the time. It's the freedom to inhabit whatever, to just relax into what's happening right now without judging it, without controlling it, without needing it to be different than it is. And that at any moment that could involve thoughts saying that there's a self or not or whatever, and it's all just it's a flow. It's like a dreamlike thing, and it's beautiful. If I have that thought about it and I choose to entertain it or whatever.
I love the example of driving. So let's imagine that we're driving along the road and we're talking to somebody in the passenger seat. We're talking about something. There's zero awareness that we're actually steering the car. Steering's just happening. But language, if somebody says, "What are you doing?" you have to say, "I'm steering the car." But it's just language, it's just a way of communicating. So we can say, "Oh yeah, I knew what was going on. I knew what I was doing. I knew I was turning the steering wheel to stay in the lane." But it just happened. It was just happening. But you can't communicate it without appearing to self. That's just the way language is. Language has evolved from common usage, and commonly people take responsibility or take ownership of what's going on.
It's certainly useful to have labels for organisms, be they human or other.
Another one that I like is to do with the word water can never quench your thirst. Another pointer that I like.
I really appreciate your description of that, Jeffrey, because, you know, it's important we don't create a new construct, right? That this is the way it really is. And now it's a new mental universe versus the former. It's just the way it is. And it's just the way it flows.
Yeah, and nothing can be known, actually. Nothing can be understood. It's just flow. It's beyond description or understanding or anything.
For me, that nothing can be known is fantastic. It's this is where the freedom is for me. This is where the word liberation comes from. I think, you know, we're liberated from the shackles of our culture, our society, to a degree, of course. But these are platitudes. Come on, somebody's got something to work on, surely.
Yeah, if someone's sort of interested in investigating some things, I've been working with Todd's YouTube channel. He's got some very nice sort of direct experience type pointings on there, which I've been going through, and they've been it made me rethink a few things. So I can recommend those. One of the things I was looking at, is there the known and the knower? Is there such a thing as a knower? Well, it was the one that made the ark.
No. What would that be?
Well, is there a knower and a known? Are they two separate things, or are they in any existence at all?
They're both just thoughts. There's neither.
There's an interesting thing that I ran into, say, working on those meditations. I did a couple of them today. Is experience anything more than a thought?
Well, it would be awareness, no?
Is there agreement on that? Experience is a thought?
For me, experience is the first thought, and it's the only thought that doesn't refer to anything outside of it.
Okay. So it's a thought without content.
All thoughts are without content.
All thoughts are their content.
How is it the first thought?
Experience. Well, this is like the end of the road. When it seemed that noticing that there's experience is a thought, and there's no one that can notice anything.
Noticing that there's experience is the first thought.
Yeah.
Okay, that's different from experience is the first thought to me. I don't know.
Oh.
Couldn't we say just noticing happens, or awareness happens, rather than being aware?
I don't see it as a thought, though. If you're experiencing something, is that really a thought? It's just experience, it's just awareness being aware of itself, no?
Well, our experience is, as far as I can experience, is that it's just, stuff kind of happens, and it appears.
Yeah, but appears to who?
So there's a kind of awareness going on of some sort or another.
Yeah, but the question you want to ask is, who is it appearing to? Is it appearing to you? Or is it
No, well, there would be a problem with that, isn't it? Because that would be making you're turning it into two things.
Turning one into two things.
But if you had just awareness, there must be awareness because, well, here we are.
Yeah, but then you go back to what is awareness? What is it?
Well,
is awareness, in my opinion, awareness is experience, right? I mean, we can go all the way down, it's just like an infinite thing that goes all the way down, it's crazy, but that's what it is, awareness is experience, and awareness is the world, and you are not the world, and you are awareness, and that's it, right? It's simple, but it's hard to think about it like that. It's not that you need to even think about it. I mean, that's just what's going on, right?
I think it's one of the sort of fundamental properties of the universe, isn't it? That you could say, well, even like in chemistry, you've got like atoms are aware of each other because they react with each other. So there's some kind of awareness going on there. In the particles, they have polarity.
So are you saying the whole universe is awareness?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have proof of that?
Sorry?
Proof of God?
Do you have proof?
Well,
I mean, how do you define God?
Well, here you are.
It goes all the way down, it's crazy.
We're all here. That's good proof.
Yeah, that's good.
So these are all concepts, right? But what I see when I sit and look at a scene and there are no thoughts at all about it, there's no scene either.
I was sitting in the car today and, you know, it was just nothing. It was just no bliss, no sensation, just, I mean, I might as well have been dead, you know, until I came back and started. Yeah, it was,
Right. The base level is unconsciousness, actually.
it's fucked up, isn't it? It's,
That's what, well, and even that's paradoxical, because what is there to notice the unconsciousness? That's a story after the fact. So what we get to is a place you can't penetrate. It's just forever beyond reach, beyond understanding, beyond comprehension, formulation, beyond seeing. You can't even see it.
I mean, that's why they say awareness can only be aware of itself, and the mind cannot know awareness, which is true. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to explain. You know, these things into words is a gift, which I don't have. I'm not gifted in that regard. Some people are much more gifted in that regard, but something to practice. That is a gift in itself, putting what you can't explain into words, which
I heard someone once say that the first distinction is the sense of being, or the sense of I am. Whether there's an I or not, but just the sense of existence. That's the first distinction. But before that, who knows? I don't know. Yeah.
It seems to me that there's two, well, if you can put levels to it, two levels of illusion. The first seems to be the illusion that thoughts exist, or like, yeah, the thoughts exist. And then getting over that, there's that reality exists. And I think we're sort of trapped in both of them. And then overcoming them is where you get to, I think, what Jeff is talking about, where it just turns into, you can't really, there's no word for it because it can't be described. Once you pass through those, once you see through those two illusions, it's like there's nothing else you can really say about it.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, go ahead.
it's the end of the road. Every conceptual thing is burned down, and you can't build anything on it. That's the fun. And when you see that, it's clear that it's done. There's no further to go.
It's just like that instinct that you know that you can't go any farther than this. You know, it would be not fathomable to go any farther than that, because it is just how it is, right? And I know exactly what you mean.
It is what's just happening, as they say.
Yeah. But I do want to say, I mean, do you think that that we are an illusion?
We're an illusion. The world's an illusion. Everything is a mental construct.
If it's an illusion, what is the real thing that we're seeing as an illusion?
I mean,
there isn't a real thing.
The one thing that I would agree with you on is it is an illusion if you think that you're a separate entity, then yeah, then it is an illusion. But if you see it as we're all consciousness and just consciousness experiencing itself, then that's not an illusion, right? That just is what it is.
So what is the point of analyzing all of this? What if here's a good meme that just occurred to me. All thinking is masturbation.
There's no point for any of this to happen right now. I mean, like, there's a lot of people that say you don't need to do anything. You're just enlightened as you are. And everything that we're doing right now is a waste of time. But There's no fun in that. I mean, I'm not giving up so easily. There's no fun.
Yeah.
I think
It's all
I think it's just pointers for people who are still.
Yeah.
But it's a big trap. It's a big trap to just tell yourself that there is nobody here and there's nothing to do, because you're just going to get in this trap. There is nobody here. And I just made an ass of myself, but there's nobody here. I could just say whatever I want to say. And, you know,
Well, it's a trap. It's a trap if that's a thought.
Yeah, you're right. You're completely right. But then you can even have.
I mean, that's like identifying with the non-identity.
Yeah.
You're still identifying.
Completely right. You're
You still
completely
have
right.
a
But
self. You still have a self going on.
But the crazy thing is that you can wake up, have a glimpse, and then you'll still be asleep because you start identifying with the spiritual ego. So then you're in another hole. You just open up another can of worms, and you know there's like all these traps that you can get in on the path, and that's one of them. Identifying with there's nobody here, or emptiness, or whatever. It's just you need to just always be double checking yourself, you know, and just seeing what's going on.
The thing that comes up for me is how do we check ourselves for self-delusion? And one of the ways that we do it is we get good company, and like LU is one, you know, like you get a guide, you get somebody who can ask you certain questions. How do we see through our illusions? Because we've all got illusions that we're hoping to peel through. But I mean, it feels like, Roy, you're doing this argument for argument's sake.
No, I'm not arguing with you. I'm not arguing with you.
no, it's fun for Roy. It's fun, right, Roy? It's just fun.
I'm not
Oh,
trying
you're
to
not?
argue. No.
No.
If it seems like I'm
No,
trying to
I mean,
argue,
it's fun to think
apologize,
about. It's
like,
fun to question it. I'm just saying it's fun to, why
I'm here
not
to have a
question it? Yeah.
I'm here to have a conversation. If you want to say your end, say your end, and then I will say my end. There's no big deal.
But like when I did the LU questions at the end, you know how they do those closing questions? There was a couple of them that I was like, well, I don't fucking know. Like, how would I know? How could I know? Like, why would I even bother to try to understand? Or, you know, why would I even try to think that I could understand this? Like, I don't know. Like there was a part that I answered that way because it was like there was just a, you know, because I was blown wide open. So it was just like I knew that there was no answer. So when it comes to a certain point, it's just like, well, I don't know. I don't know. And it's beautiful and I don't care. But there was something else that I was going to say. Oh, I was going to ask Roy if you did you do Fetter work at all? I'm just curious because.
No.
Okay, I'm just curious because of the whole where they're one Fetter where that's why too after you go through LU and you're done with the first three, you kind of you're kind of done, and then it's like, oh, but what about all the other Fetters? Because I mean I want to explore and inquire about just for fun what they're talking about when they say or even you, Jeff, when you said there's no world out there. You know, there's one of the Fetters that you figure out that you do exercises where it's you figure out there's no world out there, everything is mind created. To me, I still feel like I sense that there's a world and there still is some kind of perspective here. There's, there might not be a total identification with who I thought I was inside of this body, but there is a sort of perspective.
Yeah, because there's a network of beliefs that you probably can't even put into words. You probably don't even know they're there, that support the view that there's a world that you can know. And eventually you see what those beliefs are, and you see that they don't hold up. And so the dialogue we're having, I think it's useful. I mean, my path was this logical contradiction path where I realized first you believe conventional thoughts and then you disbelieve them. You have a new belief that says those old beliefs are false. But eventually you see that all beliefs are incoherent. They're nonsense. They literally don't refer to anything. They don't hold together. And at that point, it was like being hit with a hammer. It's like that, because at that point, the world really does dissolve.
And
So
and
it's a belief that there's a belief that, okay, so when I look out what I'm looking at right now, it's just the thought that there's a globe, that we are, these are beliefs that there's an earth that is shaped like a globe, spheric, like, and there's a belief that we live here and it's 90% water, whatever, like those are all, is that what you mean by even those beliefs?
Well, those are very high level conceptual beliefs. I'm talking about beliefs like, well, is there a center in this scene that I'm seeing with my eyes, presumably? Is there a center to that, or is the idea that there's a center just a thought? Is there depth, or is that just a thought? Is there a left and right, down, or are those just thoughts?
Okay.
You know, is there time, or is that just a thought?
There's a good quote. It's like there is no.
That's a good point, Jeff. It sounds like the center would be the sort of archetypal I. The idea of a center.
Right, that's right. It hides the idea that there's a frame of reference, which there isn't.
Isn't it like thought in the sense that it's interpreting perceptions and things, and the thought, it's like interpretation, which is a thought. So that's, you have these perceptions that you take it for granted and you're not even thinking it, but it was at one point, that interpretation, it's still a thought. Yeah.
Right. Or the idea that I'm looking at a red object and a blue object. Well, the idea that those are colors are thoughts. The idea that they're different colors is a thought. The idea that these objects have a shape is a thought, or that they're objects at all, that's a thought. I mean, there are many thoughts, and they're all strung together, and they all have to be disentangled, and that's why Fetter work is a big deal, because I mean, there are people who say this will happen spontaneously, but I don't see how.
Which part?
Sorry.
Which part? Which part
Yeah,
you said, Rory?
which part? Yeah, which part is
I'd say those later stages, like he was just saying, like perspective, right?
I mean, it happened to me, I'll be honest with you, if you want to ask, because Jahar was asking about my path. My path was being stupid and just falling into a hole, basically. And I had a spontaneous awakening when I was fairly young, and I did nothing. I did no spiritual work, and somehow I lost my sense of self like 6 months ago. So I don't know what the hell happened, but it happens to some people. It happened to me. I don't know why it happened, but I don't know. And I just want to say one thing, like, it just makes you question why it happens, and I don't have an answer for you. And I suffered a lot too, and I'm still suffering, I'm suffering immensely. It's to say that I'm not suffering is a joke, I'm having an immense amount of suffering because I'll just be open. I essentially had a mental illness during this entire time because my background was a mom that was unstable and my dad had anger problems. So I grew up in that environment without a lot of love. So I just had a lot of intrusive thoughts, and that manifested as a lot of fear. And, anybody can wake up. It's just, and now I'm dealing with those problems now. The way that I'm experiencing it now is just it's coming out of me, it's being dissolved, and it's very difficult to deal with because it's like it's hard to talk about these things because it's just so off the wall. Like I don't know, I don't really have words, but it's been really tough and it continues to be tough. And I don't know how long it's going to take until I have like some sort of like normalcy in my life. But I will just say the thing that surprised me the most was that you can still suffer on the path. Like it doesn't matter. It's the end of suffering really is just being okay with your suffering. That's what I found. But I'm starting to see that there could potentially be a complete end to suffering, if that makes sense. But that's very rare in this lifetime from what I'm seeing, from talking to a lot of people that have gone to that part.
I don't think it's that rare. I think suffering does end, and it ends with a clear seeing that suffering is resisting what is, and it's the story of suffering. It's like the thought, I don't want this. This has to change. You know, so what's left after dismantling that illusion is there could be pain, but that's just sensation. That's okay. Yeah, either physical or emotional pain. There's nothing wrong with that.
But what is the pain? What is the pain? Like that's what I'm trying to understand. And what is it? Is it the resistance that is painful? Not like pain in the body, but you know, like the mental pain that we've all been accustomed to. What is that pain?
Look into it. It's just sensation and thoughts. That's all.
Yeah, and you can get to a point where it's not really, you know, if you stop telling yourself that it's painful, then it's like 50% less painful, you know, right off the bat. You know, that's just how it is.
Yeah,
there's
go
ahead.
Well, I was just saying it becomes an object of interest. It's like, what is this? What's it doing right now?
I would say that pain and that suffering, Roy, when you're experiencing that, that's at least what happened here is this is an indicator where we're still, for lack of a better term, where we're still identified. And so these become the points where we want to dig in and investigate, you know, because we can say, okay, I had an awakening, but I still suffer. So that at some level, there's still some identification with that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I used to resist a lot of those until it became very clear that, hey, these were my indicators. These were where I was still making a connection in between physical sensation, thought, and then a response. And there's an automatic connection that happens there very, very quickly, which is why some of us are talking about Fetter work, is that the Fetter work helps us find the gap in between those and see what's connected and what's not connected, because we're making the connection, but it happens so quickly that we don't see it. So it's a matter of finding that space in there and going, is this true? And that's always found it's never found in the report that we constantly want to generate that says, okay, now I've got this, and then this is the formula for it. It's always found in the absolute direct experience. You know, it's a moving out of the mental wanting to sort it out and just going, what is here, what is felt here, you know, and it's almost like an energetic inquiry.
Yeah, and that's been my experience lately in the past 6 months, and it's been very interesting. But it just begs the question to ask, who is even believing these anymore? If these sensations, you know, it's just something that's been ingrained into us for so many years. To start unplugging from that is, you know, it's basically that you're undoing your lifetime's worth of conditioning, you know, and that's part of it. And I realize that it's a slow process. You know, it's not going to be overnight that you're going to be Ramana Maharshi. And I wish I was, but no, just kidding. You know, I understand that, you know, it's part of life. So, but you're right, because really, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that Pernilla talks about that. I think with Ted knows too that, well, she talks about how over the years, like your body was conditioned a certain way, like you were just saying, like it even changed the hormones or something, like biochemically in the body, like something got, yeah, it made a groove or whatever it is. I don't know, maybe somebody else could speak to it better than I could, but Pernell talks about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, when she was saying that, she was talking about how adrenaline and endorphins, and she was referencing trauma in that case, you know, or Roy was referencing some mental illness. So what that does biochemically is means that those chemicals are constantly pumping in us at all times. So the biological movement of those chemicals in the body doesn't necessarily just come to a screeching halt. Even if there's clarity for a moment or for a day or for months, there seems to be two aspects of the process. Of course, that's all apparent, but simply dismissing it as apparent doesn't get us from point A to point B. This still seems that we have to sort of dig into that, and it's a literal rewiring of the mind. You can hear Adyashanti talk about it, where he was in a state post some of these amazing deep seeings and clarity that he felt like his mind was being rewired and rewired and rewired. So it's happening on all different levels, whether you want to call it the gross relative all the way to the absolute. It's nothing there, but it seems to seep into all of them.
So it seems like there's a lag effect with.
Yeah,
there can be, and that depends on the level of conditioning and many times trauma that's happened in the particular experience.
Yeah, in my experience, what you just said was right. It's like I was basically, what I can see it now is that it was just that my body was in fight or flight, and that was it my entire life. Like my entire life I was in fight or flight, and now it's just this rewiring of the body that's happening. And it's a slow process, you know, it's like training an old dog, you know, it's just going to take time. And
yeah, well, that's what I meant by going to your direct experience, especially whenever we're triggered, because it becomes very, very subtle. But that's what is happening on these awakenings. And what I think Jeff was referencing about how it doesn't all happen all at once is because there are, in fact, layers of subtlety. You know, and everyone resists layers and stages, but for the practical application, it does become more subtle until we get some level of clarity in the more gross versions of it. It's hard to see the subtle, and things that are subtle are, okay, is this actual fight or flight? Or in my case, sometimes I will find that this is just a habit, like it's not even emotionally triggered anymore. It's, you know, it becomes as simple or as automatic as a habit of scratching your face when you itch. And so, but you have to have some point of clarity to see whether it's habit and it requires attention, or if it's something where you're engaged and identified. And there is a difference.
I mean, suffering is a habit, wouldn't you agree? Because then we identify with these sensations in the body, and then that just becomes a habit over time, right?
Well, yes, but I think what I'm saying is what Vince was saying was like neural pathways and stuff, is that there's still, so there's also sort of a habitual, I'm used to turning left on this street, so I'm always going to turn left. Whereas that may not necessarily be rooted in deep suffering flavored identification. It's kind of just a habit. So, right, but again, right. It takes direct examination to sort of go, what is this that's happening right here? What's happening right now?
I would imagine, Roy, that something that could be a good tool for you would be firstly to start investigating the difference between pain and suffering. So if we look at pain as a response to a physical sensation, regardless of the cause. So we have a physical sense that is stimulated. Usually you'd imagine it's our sense of touch, right? So somebody punches us or sticks a needle in us, that's clearly pain. The moment we say that should not have happened, we start suffering. So if you can bring these two apart, you can start to see that there's a process that goes on where we have a sensation, and then immediately the mind brings up a story about that sensation. So let's say you feel a little tingle on the back of your neck, and the mind will say, there's a mosquito there. And then the body will slap it or wave it away or something. It'll respond to what the thought. So we will at a gross level, we will say, I'm responding to the fact that there was a mosquito on my neck. But that was a story. We don't know whether it was a mosquito or not. It might have been touched by a leaf falling out of a tree, or you invent something, it doesn't matter. But the story was that it was a mosquito, and the body then responds to that. So we've got this experience and then a story about it. And then from that story we respond, and that's the next experience. And then we have a story about that. And so this round and round and round and round thing happens all the time. This is from the moment you wake up, this is what's going on. So when this is recognized and we can notice the stories, we kind of break that cycle. So suffering, it was interesting. Yesterday, somebody did a haiku and they talked about suffering, and then they called that reality. And I had to, my response was that pain is mandatory, but suffering is optional.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a bullshit thing too. That's like we have a choice to do that. But if you can understand that suffering is the result of the stories you bring up about the pain, it's an opportunity to break that cycle.
That was really, really big for me because, you know, your ego is the one that's complaining about what's going on. So if you're complaining that you're in pain, you're just fueling the cycle of the ego. And I really realized that, and it was just kind of shocked me. That's only been like a big breakthrough for me in the past month. Just to realize that if I just stop complaining about my experience, even if your experience sucks and you just stop complaining about it, it's just going to get better automatically. You know, it's just kind of crazy to see it like that. And it's been very helpful.
Yeah, frequently it only takes noticing for something to change.
I mean, it's like you notice something that you've done or you notice something that somebody else does, like biting their nails, and you point it out to them, and they don't even realize that they're doing it consciously, you know, and it's just, you tell them one time. It's the same thing with yourself. Yeah, you're right.
Yep.
But it's just getting to the point that you're conscious about it takes some time.
Yep.
One of my favorite quotes, I think it's from the Stoics, the ancient Greeks, something like, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. I think another way of saying what Vince talking about.
Yeah, it's kind of easy to think that suffering is purely mental, but it isn't. We do the consequence of saying it shouldn't be there is another experience. It will induce pain. And then of course it is a cyclic thing. So, you know, we think it's bad and we feel bad. And of course that causes us to say, well, I was right, it is bad. And then we feel even worse, and around we'll go until something catches our attention and we're not thinking about it. You know, pain is interesting. You know, I have a fairly constant pain. I'm living it right now. I have arthritis in this hand that's really, really bad. And I have tinnitus as well. And the tinnitus is the classic example. You know, I don't even know I've got it unless I think about it. If the word tinnitus arises, I can actually hear it. But without that focus on it, it's just not there. And it's the same with this pain. It's there all the time is one way to describe it, but I'm only aware of it when I think about it.
You
So does that
know,
mean the pain's not there if I don't think about it? I don't know.
I also have tinnitus, and you know, you read online that people want to kill themselves because of it, and you wonder why. Why would you kill yourself because of that? It's like it's this ringing in your ears, but you can just drive yourself crazy, you know, with this ringing in your ears. And
yeah, do you experience not noticing it at times?
Yeah, of course, yeah. I forget that. I mean, now that you mention it, now it's there again. But after like a few hours, I'll forget that it's there, and then you know, every once in a while, I'll be like, oh, there's ringing in my ears, and
yeah.
So before I got into the inquiries that you guys shared with me, I was looking at that suffering, and I noticed that thought, and then the content of thought. When I focus on that, it tends to make my experience into concrete, like it keeps it there.
Yeah.
It keeps it there. And I had no idea that that was taking place. And then when I go into the body, whether it's a tinnitus or I don't want this or whatever, and I go into the bodily sensations and they're fluid, and they ebb and flow and go from different places. And like getting it out of the intellect for me, that's what I was doing before I ever came to the specific inquiry. And wow, it was almost like a turbocharger, kind of trying to discern what the hell's going on here. So I just, wait a second, am I putting stuff on concrete? Or am I allowing stuff to kind of ebb and flow? Yeah. Anyway.
Yep. There is a if you investigate, there is a really interesting connection between a physical sensation and the thoughts, and under certain circumstances, the thoughts will validate the feeling, and the feeling will validate the thoughts. It's like there's a almost an incestuous relationship between the two. Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrifying once you realize it's a positive feedback loop. It's, oh God. Yeah, I saw that one.
And that's what Fetter 4 and 5 are about. It's realizing that there is no connection between the sensation and the thought.
Except the thought says so.
Yes. Well, yeah, of course, yeah. Thoughts say all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But they're not my thoughts, they just appear.
I like that exercise that Cornelia shared, where if you have a reaction to something that's a thought, there's always, or almost always, a sensation that goes with it. And if you just go back to the sensation and sit with the sensation, the reaction will drop. And that works for a lot of things. Then some stuff that's just been ingrained a lot more, or goes deep. There's more necessary, but that does drop a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
That's the thought sensation.
A great way to stop any thought loop is to get into the body. Just do the Vipassana thing, just notice sensations. That's a good way to get out of the head, or out of that loop.
there's like a big aversion to doing that though. Really big. There was a big aversion for me, and I didn't do it. Well, first of all, I didn't even know about it. I just, for like the past decade, I just kind of skipped doing any research. I just said, F it. That's why it's dangerous if you don't talk to anybody and something like this happens to you. It's just, you can just go into your own life and just make a lot of mistakes, which is stupid. Like, don't be me. That's what I'm saying.
Gosh, when you bring up Vipassana, go ahead, Jeff, because you always have good.
Oh, okay. I'll be quick. So yeah, the other way that Angela recommends dealing with thoughts is to investigate them directly. You know, the reflections of sensations. So see them up close as just images or, you know, sound or whatever it is, you know, with basically without content. That's all I wanted to say.
I was just thinking about Vipassana because now you brought me back to my Vipassana days. And that was like the first experience that I had that I like, you know, my first 10-day retreat. And just like after leaving there, I didn't even know what happened. I don't even know if all I know is that I just was in love, you know, I was just so in love. And I remember like going with my boyfriend at the time, who's my husband now. And I remember saying to him, do I look different? Because I feel so different. And like we went to like a party at like his family's house, and I didn't really know his family, and like I was not shy, you know. Anyways, but the whole Vipassana thing, after that experience, like I was chasing so hard. I did like you know 2 more retreats, and then I served a couple times too, and like I just was chasing it so hard. I just wanted it back so bad. And like, but like they don't tell you that like, yeah, you're feeling the sensation. You just think you're the one that's doing the scanning. I was doing the scanning. I was the one who was feeling it in my head, in my forehead. It was in my eyes. It was in my throat, in my chest. It was me scanning this body that I am the whole time. So I never even got a glimpse of like, oh, actually no, it's not you. There is no you.
Yeah, at the end of a 10-day sit, and everybody gets together as they're leaving, kind of thing. You could say to somebody, "Give me your house or your car," and they would do it. You know, like that's just amazing how much that love is. You know, but yeah, I did lots and lots of 10-day sits and a few 20-day sits, and the end of it for me was asking a fellow who was just lived it. He just was at every single sit in Vipassana for years and years and years. And I said, we're all enlightened people. And he said, oh, maybe next lifetime. And that kind of killed it for me at the end. Yeah. I was in a bigger hurry than that. I wasn't going to wait till next lifetime.
I had kids. That's the only reason I stopped. I was like, I can't leave my kids for 10 days.
I'm going through this time in my life now where I'm just in love with everything and everyone. And
yeah.
And the difference is I know those are just thoughts too. And you know, and the experience will inevitably change into something else, and that'll be mediated by thoughts as well. And so like it's all just light, you know, things flow, things happen. And the experience is really not something to be chased. The experience comes out of the insight, I think. You know, which is the not identifying with thoughts, with the not believing in thoughts, with holding everything lightly. And then things can flow, and then what's beautiful manifests and can be enjoyed. But just like happiness, you know, experience is not something that can be chased.
Yeah,
doesn't work that way.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. If I used to think everybody just wants to be happy, you know, and then I could change that to say everybody wants to feel good. When you think about it, when you think about it, feeling good doesn't exist unless you've got feeling bad. That's a comparative thing. Pernilla says something, I love it. She says, what we I'm paraphrasing, of course, what we see as bad is usually the solution. It's the solution that the body has come up with. What that means, I guess, is that we don't need to shun one feeling and chase another feeling, which is kind of what we spend our life doing, isn't it? We don't want to feel hunger, we want to feel satisfied. Of course, the reality is we never do. Even if we've just eaten a meal, it's just finished, isn't it? Till next time. But anyway, so bad feelings, suffering, pain is no different to feeling great. It's just a sensation, it's just a feeling, and it's all part of the ebb and flow of everything. Nothing is static. The idea that we can be permanently happy is a joke, isn't it? And if you can imagine some theoretical situation where somebody was permanently happy, would they know they're happy?
Yeah, the point is to see that happiness as a thought.
Yeah. So a good one I find is take a toddler, take a 2-year-old who's just wandering around the backyard, picking up stones and sticks and looking at them and being amazed by what they're seeing. You know, do they know what they're doing, or are they just doing it? You know, they're feeling really good. They're smiling and laughing as they do this. Do they know they're happy? I don't think so. That's just the way they are.
They're going with the flow.
So on this discussion about chasing happiness, and I'm popping in here just because this is being recorded, and in case somebody comes across this and has different language, forgive my language first off, because I'm coming from a different side, so you might have to, you might disagree with this. That's perfectly fine, or you might, want to attack me with different language, which is okay too. But what I found, and I feel like I resonate with you guys. I really, really feel that we're in common here, but the language that I'm using is different. I found when I'm trying to chase serenity and peace and happiness, whoa, that's missing the mark. When I start to align myself with, and here's the language, thy will, when I focus on thy will, which you could also put in thus or whatever, happiness and serenity and relaxation is a byproduct of that. So for anybody who uses that kind of a language, maybe that'll help them decode that. Or I could be also talking about something different, but I wanted to punch in here.
I think that those things match up really well. Thy will with it is what it is, right? It's like, oh, this is right. There's a surrender, and the words thy will can help some people like move into that space of, oh, this is what's showing up. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah. Thanks, Kaiser.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, if someone finds that they use that language, they don't have to drop that language and borrow someone else's and go into void or emptiness or what. That's why I popped in here, because I agree with what you just said. Yeah.
Yes. Hey, can I bring us back to the beginning of a question earlier that started to touch into something for me, and it has to do with direct looking. And maybe it's a question of sensation versus experience. We got into this loop on experience. And I know that I recently heard or read somebody saying, well, even experience is illusory and it's just a thought, and you guys were saying, but in terms of direct looking, am I just tangling myself up with words here, where the current experience, I am looking at sensations, but maybe I'm calling it an experience. The direct looking was so amazing with working with my guide, and direct looking at what, you know, ego is, or what thoughts are, and that thoughts don't have volition or don't have feelings, etc. And ego is just a bundle of thoughts, so it can't be a thing. Anyway, back to my question. I don't even know if I'm making sense in terms of where I'm trying, and maybe I'm uselessly trying to sort something out between sensation and experience. Is this making any sense in it as a question? If not, I'll back off.
Don't back off.
Okay.
I'm hearing you ask, what is direct experience? Would that?
As I've been practicing direct looking, yeah, well, see, there's another use of the phrase direct experience. So direct experience, and one way I know that is like recognizing that direct experience is initially positive, negative, neutral. And then we label that, and then we have an emotional response to it.
Okay, look, let's stop. An exercise that I use when I'm guiding, I call it the cup exercise. Just say, pick up a cup and look at it, and really notice what's happening as you look at it. Okay, now when you pick up the cup, you're picking up an illusion. You're saying that this thing is a cup, right? And when you say it's a cup, it's a vessel to contain a liquid to drink, say, right? It's the use of it is part of the definition of a cup. But when you're looking at it, and you're really looking at it, a point will come where you stop seeing it as a cup, and you start to notice color and shape and texture, etc. Okay, and when you really sink into that, seeing the texture and the color, you realize that what you would have described as a white cup is not really white. It's actually got shades of white. It's got there's variations of the color, and what you took to be smooth is actually kind of a bit of a rough surface, because you're seeing grooves and indentations now because you're looking at it really closely. And when you're so involved in what it is that you're seeing, there's no you seeing it, and there's no thing being seen. There is simply the experience of seeing. And in the exercise, I ask people then to say, ask the question, who is seeing it? And as the moment they ask that question, they stop seeing. Because the person who's seeing it only exists in their mind. And they have to get into their mind to say, well, it's me that's seeing it. But they can't be seeing it at the same time that they're recognizing the idea of a me doing the seeing, or the idea of a cup being seen. As soon as they go, it's a cup, it's an object that I'm seeing, again, they stop seeing. You can't. So in the middle of those, when they're not asking those questions, when there's just the seeing, and we're seeing color and texture and so on, That's all there is. That's what I would call direct experience. Sans thinking.
Right. And so turning that direct experience towards the inquiry I want to say towards the inquiry of, for example, can you perceive a self or can you perceive an ego? I mean, there's what I've noticed is as I've done that direct looking and only reporting the sensations, as I can feel the almost gurgling of the beginning of a thought wanting to form, and I don't lean into that, and I just like notice that kind of gurgling, and it's like, okay, and I can feel my body wanting to lean into like storytelling or something, and I don't do that. And then so then the answer is nothing, right? Because if I don't lean into or follow any of those, and I guess maybe I'm looking for some additional verification that that's the direct looking inside, right? Inside, outside. So Lubo blew me out of the water like last week when he made some comment about when we look for self, isn't it, you know, why do we have to look inside? And all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, wait, right. So yeah, things are getting shaky for me, which is good. I know, but yeah, okay. I'm trusting those sensations. And I guess I was just getting caught up with the word experience because sometimes they can have overlay, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I give that exercise, what I'm hoping people will get from it is they will recognize that direct experience is actually very, very fleeting. It happens underneath, and that it almost always produces stories about what's going on.
Yeah.
So another story I tell frequently is that the brain is a predictive organ. What it does is it collects just enough information to complete a story. And so if you're walking along and you see a tree and you go, that's a tree, from that moment on, you're going to be relating to your idea of a tree rather than the actual tree. You stop seeing the actual tree and you're thinking about it if it stays in your focus, and you're relating to your idea of a tree. And this is what we do all the time in life.
So fast, right?
Yeah. I don't know if this helps, but it seems to me that could this be a subtle version of wanting to be in control, wanting to stay in control of what's being experienced, that there's a doer or there's an experiencer experiencing.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, as because one of the things that at least helps me with it is something like, if my heart is, I'm not beating my heart, I'm not growing my hair, I'm not growing the grass, all those things are just happening without me doing anything about it. But once it comes to, there's a cup, somehow I want me to be involved in that decision making. When in other areas, when I look at other areas, I notice that actually not all of it is happening automatically without my need to be the one doing it or experiencing it. It's just experiencing itself without me experiencing it. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah.
I think there is something in there in getting in my own way with language.
Yeah, you're right. It's because you're not gonna it's not something that it's gonna happen in your mind that you're gonna say, oh wow, I get it now with the thought, right? Because that's just never gonna happen because you can't get it with the thought. It's something that comes to you. So by doing this investigation, you somehow mysteriously give yourself more chances to bring this understanding into your reality, right? And you're just realizing what already. What I would say is try to find proof that you are a separate individual. Are these bodily sensations proof that you are a separate entity or your thoughts? And if you come back with yes, can you find proof to provide that this belief is true? And then just keep doing it's called it's just the direct path, you just start at the end and go from there. It's frustrating. It's really frustrating because you're just going to keep going in these loops and you're going to feel like you're banging your head against the wall, but everything and nothing happens by chance, right? You're here for a reason, so just keep at it.
Oh, it's been great. Thank you all.
I'd like to pick up on what you said, Catherine, and what Lubo told you, and that I think that is brilliant. I love it. That looking why would you look inside for a self? Yeah, look, it's like, so when you think about it, the world only exists from my perspective. Nowhere else. It's just from my perspective. So my mind says, I know that there's a tree outside there. But the reality is that I can only think about that and I can conjure up that image. It's out of my I'm not seeing it. It's outside from where I am. So if we accept that the world only exists from our personal perspective, excuse that phrase, then I don't know that the Statue of Liberty is still there. Maybe it got blown up last night and it's not there anymore. I can only think about it. So what exists for me is only what's impinging on my direct experience, or this is a bit tricky, the direct experience of my thoughts. That's the reality for me. And if you go to quantum physics, there's some validation of the fact that things only exist when they're being interacted with. But regardless of that, for me, from my perspective, the only existence is what I'm interacting with. And there's also the reality that I'm going to keep calling that thing a cup. So I'm going to keep calling that thing a tree. So I'm going to keep on reacting to my idea of things.
Can I?
Yes, don't ask permission, just do it.
So also it's that perspective I'm still identified with.
Yes, that's a big one. Yeah.
It's that perspective that I realize I'm still identified with. I still think I'm seeing through these eyes out of this body, right?
Yeah.
And I know it's an illusion, but I don't know it yet, right? I know it hasn't dropped.
Yep. Well, it doesn't have to drop per se. That in that at a practical level, we need to keep behaving as if that's a real thing there.
Because cars moving across my
All that
matter
stuff.
that this body continues. Right?
But knowing that it's an idea is how we cease suffering.
Okay. Thank you.
So can I ask, is that one of which Fetter is that? I just am curious.
Oh,
because like even though like I can see, yeah, because like I said before, I also am in like what she said. It's like I know that they're not controlling this. I know that I'm not in this body, but yes, I still sense a perspective of there's this perspective here looking out at the trees outside that are over there, and I can't reach them, and they're over there, right?
Yep.
That's Fetter 6 that you're talking about.
Okay.
So if you've
So
heard it,
I'm on. Okay.
you can put it, if you haven't really studied the Fetters, there's another way that you can do it. There's different models just to provide you context for right now. There's awakening, like Adyashanti does the mind, heart, gut thing. So Fetters like 1 through 3, and maybe some of 4 and 5 is like mind identification, and then heart or unity consciousness, or the 6th Fetter. It's all it's all interchangeable. It's effectively the same thing.
It's effectively the same thing, even though you just said mind, heart.
I'm just using different ways to describe it, just so that you're just, I'm not just because I didn't know how familiar with Fetter 6 that you were, was all.
Yeah, just very vaguely from whatever I read on Kevin's site and whatever on the interviews with Angelo. Yeah, so that I can just, I mean, I'm just gonna keep doing the 4 and 5 for now, and just fuck around with that for a while, I guess.
Look, the other things happen anyway. The Fetters are just a model, and you work on 4 and 5, and you'll find that that'll affect all the other ones. And you know, it's just a good way of looking at things. A way of, it's kind of like a roadmap, I guess, that you can follow. The thing I've got about the Fetters, I've got a list of them because I keep forgetting what they are, and it actually talks that Fetter 6 is fixation on the idea of form. Jeff wants to say something here. He's forgotten what it's like to not have that Fetter. Yeah.
Almost, yeah. It's pretty hard to reconstruct it. I don't think it just doesn't feel the same anymore. What was I going to say? Oh, I was going to say Fetters 4 and 5 are sort of like the model for the other Fetters. You're looking at a very basic illusion, one that's hard to see through, and when you see through that one, there is no craving or aversion. Those are just mental labels. Then you open to the view that all these other things could be mental labels too. You know, things as basic as space, things as basic as subject-object duality. So it's sort of like dominoes falling.
Yeah, it sounds trippy.
It is.
Yeah, and keep in mind, it's not a very linear model either. That was the thing that I had to get my head around when I first started talking with Pernilla and the group too, was going that these seem to be very, very linear, but then right away in the first week of that group, it was like listening to other people and myself drop back into one, and then, but then also going, So I've experienced aspects of 7, 8, 9, and 10, and that happens all the time, but they don't necessarily stick. So it can be a little bit of influx and just sort of okay, this one and then that one. So yeah, it's not always linear.
I've been looking to the sensory experience recently, and I find it like with the sight it's probably hardest, but with the hearing it feels a lot easier, especially with some music. Then I stopped to see that I stopped to the hearer is completely dissolved. It's just the hearing, and it's everywhere, and it's just arising, and the sounds just arise and then they dissolve back to awareness or whatever. With the seeing, it's a bit more difficult to get there, but I somehow understand or have some sort of understanding for that. That I don't actually see objects at distances. I just see one flat screen sort of, but I don't have, it's more like intellectual understanding in case of seeing. I don't know, and I understand what you said about the colors of the mug when I'm looking at the mug, and I see actually I see just the colors. I don't see a mug, I just see colors and different shades of those colors. And then the mind constructs a mug out of it and makes the stories about it. How do you investigate it even further? So you actually really can, at some point, completely drop the mind filter, and you just see things 2D, and all sort of these things that people are talking about, and then the next step, non-duality somehow. Yeah.
It sounds like Fetter 4 and 5. The desire.
Sure, there is.
I may not be typical, but I don't see things 2D or 3D. I just like the visual field it's much more subtle and fluid than that. So I could say, like I see a patch of color, and conventionally I'll call that center, even though there's no center. And then around that is just a blur, right? And it's shifting all the time. And so I'm not sitting in a room. That's obviously a mental construct. Right now I'm seeing a little fuzzy patch of color, which is your face on the screen, if I want to interpret it. But so I don't really know what people are talking about 2D, but because that's a perspective too, and like there isn't a perspective. It's just like a fluid thing that's indescribable.
Well, I heard Jitka talking about some of the things that Angelo talks about different exercises, practices, being with, but also recognizing that the visual system has so much more brain power assigned to it that it is probably the one that changes last. But he talks about sound being, and it's kind of that non-dual where there is no subject object, right? And that's what I heard you describing, Jitka. And
actually it was Angel's video when I first time actually got this immersion in the sound. It was just amazing. I just couldn't stop listening to music for 2 more hours. But I still, but still there is this very firm thought that if I walk with my head towards a wall and I don't stop, I'm going to hit myself and it's going to hurt. Or this, I just, it's probably outside my understanding and the current level. I don't know. This non-duality.
Angelo has told the story of walking into a wall one night, getting up in the middle of the night and walking into the wall, like forgetting to remember that the wall was there.
Okay.
I think the
that.
point of
Angelo has a video called Exploring the Sense-Gates, which when I watched that video, at the end of it, there was hearing, just hearing. There was sensing, feeling, just feeling, but nothing detectable doing either of those things. So I found that one was kind of transformed me somewhat when I listened to it and watched it. It's exploring the sense gates, and it sounds like that's kind of similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't think that there's an intention to morph into somebody who's seeing the world in 2D all the time. I think these exercises are there to show us what we do habitually, where we create the 3D thing. So the idea of distance is a creation, but it's a useful creation in normal life. And the world being 3D is a useful thing. But I guess most people haven't had the experience of being so immersed in a piece of music that they become the music. It's my memory of doing that exercise is that my body was, I'm feeling it now as I think about it, as I was talking about it. My body was vibrating like the music. My whole being was the music. The music and me were the one thing. And that's a great way. Yeah, and as Catherine says, that the visual part of the brain is so dominant because that's what we've developed as humans over the years and over the millennia, that it is harder to do it with that. But with the music one is great. Yeah. So these are just to show us things, just to show us what we habitually do, and then we can put them aside, so to speak, knowing that what we're doing is we're moving through a dream, a thought created dream.
Yeah, and like you say, Vince, it's really about seeing how the mind constructs everything.
Yeah.
And whether that someone would describe that as 2D or 3D or 4D is quite irrelevant, because that description itself is a comparison to remembered things and more thoughts. It's and the direct experience is utterly unlike anything that could be described or compared. It's just here, this.
I think there's also on the visual side of things that the air you're breathing, there's no distance between you and the air you're breathing. It's as immediate as sound. But because of the visual, the mind constructs that there's distance or there's nothing. But the air you're breathing is directly there. Or the temperature, is it hot, is it cold, it's immediate. There's no distance between you and, but again, that's another way, I think. At least I think about it.
But words are always misleading, because no distance implies that there's some central point from which distance could be measured. I mean, there's nothing we can say that ever touches experience. It's just a pointer at best, and if anything is taken literally, it's misleading.
I actually have frustrating week kind of behind me. Frustrating in the sense because I have the feeling that like everything that I look at is a lie. Like every object that I perceive is, I kind of see it's empty and it's there. But then again, I feel it's also not the truth. Like I'm really on a quest for truth here, and I feel I'm constantly lying at the moment. It's yeah, frustrating.
It's a big one.
And
What makes you think there's such a thing as truth to find?
Exactly.
yeah, maybe that's, yeah, because yeah, kind of my question about that is how can I continue from here? Is it like I'm also thinking about, you know, okay, I think I need to go on within the Fetter model or something, but maybe as I understood it, once you're through Fetter 1, 2, 3, you can go wherever you want to. You don't have to follow a linear path. It's not linear anyways, but to seize through the self-illusion is a very important factor for all of them. So you gotta check that, but then you can kind of go wherever it leads you. So my question is, if this is such a strong appearance right now to me, such a strong pointer or whatever, to feel that wherever I look at it's a lie, it's there is something that I need to look at, maybe that like how do I go from here to there, which is a complete illusion. But what can I do? What can I ask? What can I inquire for? Which Fetter is that even?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, and my experience might be valuable to you in that.
I'm not sure I understand.
Oh, go away. When I woke up, it wasn't Fetter 1 that fell for me. Or well, maybe that's not quite right. My realization that I call my waking up experience was that this is it. And I don't know where exactly where on the Fetter model that one fell, but it was after that I went to LU and they asked me about self. And it was obvious to me that self was just a story. But it was like I was looking back at that. It wasn't any gateway that I went through to start with. It was the acceptance of what I perceived as a done deal. That was my gateway through, my portal, I call it, that I fell through. But if I really don't know where that would be on the Fetter model, but like it's not being necessarily a linear thing. It was like maybe Fetter 1 went with that at the same time, or maybe it had already gone. I have no idea. There was no point where I suddenly realized that self was just a story. Maybe I've been living with that idea for a long time. I don't know. So the idea of direction, the idea of you have to do this thing in some sequence is just not right. Yeah. From my experience. Maybe it is for others. I don't know.
So
I just think the pointers you have to hold them really lightly, at least for me, because if I start holding onto them too much, then I'm already making up more stuff. And I'm already making more concepts.
Yeah.
You know, but if you use them lightly, then like treat it like it's a toolbox, and you're not going to sit there and like look at your pliers and go, oh yeah, you know, it's sort of, and I can see myself when I do that. So yeah, it's like I try to hold them lightly, and then it's just helpful to me to do that. And I do see how the fetters are all over the place, but it's all like Jeff says, you know, it's concepts and thoughts. So, and we have, you know, and the disidentifying with thought is kind of the first step. But so you don't want to start making new thoughts to start identifying with, or descriptions of other people's experiences even, you know. But then like for me, like I'll see something and like a 2D thing and I go, oh, okay. But then I have to let it go, because as soon as I label it, it becomes something I'm running out. Oh, well, it's gone now. Oh, and then you get all that. And so you have to just go, okay. Oh, that's interesting. That's been really helpful for me. The pointers, and yeah.
Yeah, we forget their pointers sometimes. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, we think, yeah, they become solid and they become objects, and
Which fetters, Sandra?
Again,
Which fetters have you broken?
I graduated from LU, so 1, 2, 3.
Oh, okay. So I won't be able to help you with the path I followed. I think I had broken 7 and 8 basically, and that became the basis for a couple of logical puzzles that really finished it for me. But I can't. If you haven't broken 7, it won't make any sense. Yeah.
I don't know what 7. That's why I cannot really. What is 7?
7 is the formlessness. You know, like all objects are created and distinguished in the mind. So what's here, experience, is undifferentiated and undivided.
Well, I have seen like last time I told you about this experience, like that persons who were standing like 20 meters away from me, that there were like there was no distance at all. Like they were right in front of me or in me or whatever, like everything was once. And this I've seen, so that I think that goes in that direction. And this is really like a visceral knowledge, if you can put it that way.
I'll offer it knowing that, you know, might or might not connect. So if experience really is undifferentiated and undivided, then you can't say anything about it, because any question, any thought, any statement is a relationship between 2 or more objects, and there are no objects.
Mm-hmm.
So that should be astonishing, because it demolishes the attempt to understand anything that's done forever.
Yeah, I can see that, but there's also some wanting still to understand it.
Yeah.
I'd like to maybe chime in here, and maybe like I'm both chiming into what you're talking about and saying a little bit about where I'm coming from. It's my first time here and trying to relate to your experience and hold it with where I'm at. So the big shift I experienced first, I wrote about it shortly on the Facebook page, but it was age 17 and essentially was like the seeing that direct reality is completely beyond anything I describe, like any description or anything I say, it's completely beyond that. And so after that happened, there was a period of contentment and peace, and then other stuff started again, basically ongoing process, I would say, ever since. And like when I'm hearing what you're saying, Jeff, now, I guess I'm not sure exactly how I relate with it, but I guess what comes up for me is that on the one hand, I know that there is this beyond. Even saying I know, it gets me confused with the language, but there is that being connected beyond understanding and language, with the peace that there is there and the directness that there is there. Then at the same time, I see that still a lot of my life is basically, it's still engaged in emotional processes, relationships. You know, I care about my future, my present, the people I work with, that's where a lot of my energy basically goes. I don't find a separate chooser or self that's kind of separate and placed somewhere, but a lot of everyday life is basically functioning within the same kind of challenges and interests that are normal, and include all the normal feelings and difficult feelings as well. Yeah, so I'm not even, what do I want to, my intention with saying that is first that I'm kind of hearing what you're saying about there's nothing to solve anymore. And I noticed that on one level, I relate with that. And on a different level, I keep, I'm interested in ways of understanding and relating that makes me connect more carefully to myself and others and all kinds of things, and about how the world works on the relative level, on the level of descriptions. So both are going on. And so I guess I'm just curious, sharing this with all of you and hearing whatever you have to say, and see if there's something that gets clearer.
Well, I'll answer right away and say I'm very interested in life too, as anyone would live it, and enjoying it and all of that, but it's just lighter, that's all. It's because I know ultimately it's all a dream. And that nothing really matters. And that sounds like nihilism, but it's not. Nihilism is, I think, when you're disillusioned because you think there should be meaning and you see that there isn't. But if you already know that there shouldn't be meaning, then it's freedom. So life is enjoyable and free. And and nothing's heavy, really.
Yeah, what Judy said, hold the pointers lightly, hold everything lightly. Well, don't hold it at all, but yeah, be light and ephemeral. Yeah.
I think also one of the things that I noticed that happens with thoughts versus direct experience in terms of lightness is thoughts have this way of making things seem permanent.
Yeah.
Whereas direct experience is aware things are not permanent, things are constantly changing. But thoughts have this aspect to them that makes it seem like things are permanent when they're not.
Yeah. Yeah, that comes back to the meme that I mentioned last time, or in the past somewhere, that all thoughts are bullshit is a good starting point.
Yeah,
That was
I'm
very
curious
useful
about
to me.
Sandra, what she means by when she looks at things, that it looks like a lie. What do you mean by that? Like, are you noticing a thought that says, "Oh shit, that's not really a cup," or like, what do you mean by when you look at things, you feel like you know, it's not the truth, and you're looking for the truth?
Good question.
I just feel like that could maybe get to the heart of the matter a little more about
Yeah,
how you can look
maybe.
what you like. What do you mean? Like I
Yeah,
mean,
I
I
just
assume. Go ahead. Yeah.
I just resonated very strongly with what Samuel said about, you know, the thoughts wanting things to stay constant. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's like if I would really extend it, it's like a flickering movie. It's like in 1 second it's here, and the other it's not. So I cannot really trust what I'm seeing. I think that's kind of it, you know.
Yeah, like the thoughts are wanting it to be more permanent, but then you know that the direct reality, like he said, is it's not. It's not. But your thoughts are saying, but what? Wait, it is though.
Yeah, and I also cannot trust, like I'm not able to conceptualize what I see, in the sense of, okay, I can say I'm looking at this lamp now. Okay, this is already I made it into a label now already, but I couldn't really say, okay, it would feel like this when I touch it. I cannot get more information. I'm not constructing it into something too much anymore, and that's why I cannot really trust it anymore, maybe. Yeah, but I think it's a good question in general to just keep asking. This is the form of inquiry maybe that I was looking for, to ask, why is that?
Yeah, it feels like that formula that Jeff was talking about, that better, whichever one that was, the 7. Like
Might
oh
I
shit.
suggest that you just change that slightly? I get what you mean about everything being a lie, but that implies that there's something that's not a lie. So if you were to change that from everything is a lie to I don't know what everything is.
Mm-hmm.
Even that kind of implies that there is a that it can be known, but it can't be. So again, that freedom, that liberation comes from not knowing anything is valuable for me. And the moment and of course we go through life behaving as if we do know things. But we know that's a lie. We know that we don't actually know. It's just a convenient assumption for the moment.
Okay, so there's really eventually nothing we could know.
Well, there's nothing, there's everything. That's the same thing.
Heard that's Fetter 10.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I chime in a bit there, if I may, that so there is this not knowing, and then at the same time there is the relative level, right, where ideas can be more or less precise. And if we're not psychotic, just then there are a lot of things we know in a way that's functional, and we can also get better at knowing things in a functional way, right? If we're a medical doctor, we can get to know certain things, and if we're this or that, and on all kinds of levels, from the emotional to the building buildings and so on. So there is a relative level, and we can get, and we have a lot of useful knowledge, and we can get more, and that matters on that level. And then there's the not getting too stuck in it.
Yeah, that's the big one. So we can take a lesson from science. Scientists will say, I have this current hypothesis, and I'll hold that until new information comes along and it changes. But everything is just a current hypothesis.
I would put it this way, all that knowledge is functional within a story. And at a deeper level, there's nothing that can be known. There's no one to know it. And the story is, just like a dream. But within the story, which, you need to some extent to live a functional life, it's good to know things, sure.
Yeah. I would say from before to after waking up, and I know you see something different, Jeff, that what we've done is we've gone from one dream to another dream. And we can say that the second dream is a bit better than the first dream because we haven't got so much shit in it, but it's still a dream. And Jeff would say, I think, that we've gone beyond the dreams altogether.
Yeah, Jeff would say that there's no way to distinguish dream from so-called reality, from imagination, from memory. Those are all mental constructs.
A bit circling back to the Fetter, whether it's linear or not, or how people use it. I also, similar to Jeff, I haven't had any linearity whatsoever. I think I started somewhere 6, 7, 8. And then I read I forget her name, Christiana. I read 10 pages into her book, and 1, 2, and 3 fell off immediately, and I was like, oh yeah, that was so there hasn't been 6, 7, then 4 and 5. I don't know, a lot of things are sort of, I'm just leaning into them and then realizing, oh, that's no longer a problem. So there's no, at least for me, there hasn't been a step by step. It's been here or there.
Yeah. So part of the not knowing here is I described before as seeking. I was a seeker, so I identified as a seeker, and I was seeking. I was looking for something. Now I'm in discovery mode. I'm just open to whatever pops up, and I'm happy to discover things. And I have the thought, I imagine, that I will continue to discover things until the day I die.
Yeah, the insights, I think, change in flavor as we move farther down the rabbit hole. But they all still appear to point to the same thing or be indicators of the same thing. Some time ago, I was really documenting a lot of these insights, and what I realized is that each insight itself was wonderful in the moment and all that, but if I were to grab onto it and then try to sort of compile it, then it went very stale very quickly, but so it was just like, so yeah, we get the aha moments, you get the aperture openings, you get all that, and you go, and then immediately, and it feels like we do this until 10 falls off, then we immediately grab and go at some level, anchor or hook, or yeah, this is it, or yeah, I've got it. And I know in that exploration here, what comes up and what I've had to work with quite a bit is the fear barriers that come up with each one of those, because each time an insight happens, or rather something falls off, it's a little more free fall. And there's still that need to provide context. Vince and I had a conversation about it last week of like providing context, and we still, no matter what, you're done with 1, 2, and 3, and you're looking at stuff and you, so, well, it's all a lie. Okay, well, so that's a mechanism of wanting to go, okay, let me grab onto this solid thing. When in actuality, the moment to moment existence is truly undefinable. And it's not this way for everybody, but for what happened here with having experienced trauma in my life, that what didn't initially feel very freeing, it was terrifying because I had nothing to grab onto. And I made the analogy to Vince that for years of doing this, it would open up and then close back down. And it felt like one of those cartoon characters that's doing that clawing and scrabbling at the end of a cliff, and then whoop, he's gone, right? And so it was a lot of this grabbing to go about, and it was about safety, about wanting to settle in and go, okay, I'm safe here, even though I know even less than I did pre-last insight, last week. And we just go, so just to notice that and then sit with that fear response, and to kind of have that acknowledgement of, there's that mechanism right there. There's that thing that's saying, I'm completely afraid to plunge into this free fall. When again, what's actually happening at any given moment is that undefinable free fall. But here it's still continuing to be something where it's clear, oh, something comes up, an obstacle, and then that emotion has to be felt in the body, has to be worked with. And it's like I call it the safety switch now, has to flip before I'm like, okay, I'll just kind of fall into this whatever that's always happening. So I just wanted to stress the emotional component of that is pretty important. I think Angelo says that a lot as well, is that emotion work and shadow work on all levels is really important, because there may be things that are dug underneath there, like these deep existential fear responses that you won't even see until you're ready for it, or something else falls off, or you put direct attention onto that. So it's like, just be open to there may be another layer there.
Also, what has been happening from the contractions that used to happen with certain emotional responses, I feel them much. They used to be like really tight, and now it's more like loose. Like it's loosened up, and then in some instances, it's not even like, what can I say? It appears and immediately like leaves or goes away. It depends on what emotional triggers are happening, but I find it interesting that the more I lean in, the less fear, that you were saying, that the less fear is there with them. And I think that before, the contractions are stronger because of the fear. And as the fear dissipates, then the contractions dissipate with them.
Yeah, there's an innate survival mechanism that comes with the programming in the human body. We don't want to and think that we will wink out of existence, right? And everything that we have ever known and referred to has always been this center that says it's I and in the body. And again, it can be absorbed and taken in from the intellectual lack of mind identification, but then moving into the body and then out into the supposed world are two different steps, and those do require those. Like I just know that the fear stopped me from plunging into those for a long time. It's something that still shows up of like, oh, and it's although that what I'm about to describe is a thought, it's also the enormity of it. It's very quite simple, and we can say yes, it's just what's happening, but then also the implication of all the fancy words that we put onto it, that you're God, that you're it, you're the source, and you go, oh my God, you know, and it's for me, it was so, even though it was a felt sense of like, yeah, everything begins and ends here with this undefinable me, but can I even absorb that? Because it was just too much. And then that created a huge fear response. So I try not to categorize it too much into that, but I do know that when that was really directly tapped into, at the time, it was more scary than it was liberating, for sure.
I don't know if it's helpful to say so, but safety and danger are mental constructs. There's only ever just this, and it's perfectly okay, and it can't be other than it is. And thoughts may say otherwise. They're just thoughts.
I'll go to sleep on that sentence. It's one at night here. Good to meet you all. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
I think I'll also be heading out. So you guys, great talk.
Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, Ted, I relate a lot to what you were saying about the stages of dropping off and then the fear thing, and it's been very helpful to just sit with it, you know, and start seeing what it is, and that just by doing that, it's enabled me to take things lighter. Whereas before, because, you know, my childhood and my life has been very, very traumatic. And it's, so yeah, the body work's very helpful, because a lot of the practices I've tried or was when I in the searching was all about, you're not the body, you know, and you're not this, you're not that. And it's like, yeah, of course, but when the body is saying I'm a bot, you know, when you've got these fear traumas, it's like you're by going into those spiritual concepts, you're actually pushing down on things. You're not opening up. Does that make sense? You're not opening. It actually closed me down more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. That's crystal clear.
Very good
Yeah.
at describing it.
No, that's really good, because that's just creating another safety level, but now it's got a spiritual flavor to it.
Yeah. And then you're like, oh, well, if this is the spiritual level, it sure doesn't feel right, you know, because it's not, there's something not right about it. You know, it just was like, so going into the body work was like, oh my gosh, wow. You know, because the whole thing was, oh, you know, you're not the body, you know, expand, you're not the body. And it's like, you're just putting more concepts. Yeah, like you said, you're building this safety belief, and it's not real, you know. And then it's so great. These sessions are great, because then there's that stuff, and then Jeff will say stuff, and I'll go, oh yeah, and I'll just go off. So it's a nice it's like a nice buffet situation right now for me, you know, because I had some really heavy stuff coming up. I guess it was before I started with Vince guiding, but it was just like, you know, absolute just everything just felt like was coming up, all the fear and sadness and grief and guilt and everything, you name it, all at once. And I was like, I can't handle this. But then when you realize, well, there's no one handling it, that's like the first part you go, well, oh, there isn't anyone that has to handle it. So now you just have to sort of start, you look at it and you question it, and that was releasing. And then the body work stuff was very releasing as well, to open up, because that pre-memory sort of fear instilled, when the body's not even aware that it's a body yet, it's being subjected to things that are, fearful, because we have that survival mode. So it's really, it's good to have this mix of everything for me, because I could never kind of follow a practice, like every day do this practice, but this is really great, because, and then taking practices lightly. So I'll try a little practice for a while and, oh, okay. But I can't stick into a regimented thing. I find really you're just creating more belief, and you're creating a safety zone that doesn't exist, a concept zone that really doesn't exist. And then you get dependent on it. If that makes sense. Yeah. That's all been really helpful.
Who knows any good jokes?
I sort of heard a good joke today. Well, I don't know what it's a joke, but I can't even believe it. And I actually wrote it down because I thought, I'm doing these trainings for work, like medications and all these, they're so boring. And you're just like, and then the one came on about recognizing unconscious bias, like in the workplace. And she comes out and she goes, do you know the brain, your unconscious part of your brain processes 11 million perceptions per second? And I wrote it down. I thought, it probably, we don't know. That's incredible, and this is like a scientific sort of test and all that, like a socially acceptable sort of test. And she goes, but we're only conscious of 40 of those. Has anyone ever heard that about the brain? 11 million per second. So that's, to me, was like, that's how we construct this world. If the brain is processing 11 million bits of information per second, that you can see how that could construct a world. Do you see what I mean? Of thinking that there's this world because the brain's going, it's like snapping all these millions of photographs or whatever. But I don't know if that's true, but that's what they said in this test for how for people to start looking at their prejudices and questioning their beliefs about other people. That was what it was focused on. You know, you have to really question your beliefs when you meet someone. Are you judging them on how they look or what they're wearing or how they talk? So the intro to the training was this little statement about the brain. So I don't know if anyone's ever heard that, but it sounded pretty wild.
Yeah.
I don't know how you define a perception or count them, but you know.
No, I mean, how do they count them, and how do they do it by like impulses and the like? How do they know it's 11 million or?
Yeah.
And how do you know that they're only conscious of 40 of them per
Just
second?
translate it into what an amazing thing.
Yeah, so that made me think there's no way, if that's even possibly, you know, a relative fact, that thought can figure anything out.
Yeah.
It's just not possible that thought you can find, you know.
In the early days, I found that as I was able to not label things and just let the you know, thing be perceived, that all experiences became much richer. And I decided it was because when one applies a label, then everything that doesn't conform to that label is excluded. Where the sensory stream is much richer than the, you know, when we're not doing that.
Yeah, that experience yesterday, kind of, I was up in the mountains and my friend has this little cabin and there's just so many birds up there. And I went into this thing where I didn't know what, you know, I was thinking, oh, those are birds singing and that's bird song. It just was like this experience and it was just unbelievable. I was just like, and even now thinking about it, it was just, and I realized, oh yeah, you know, if that applies to birds, it applies to all experience, really, in a way. And that was the thought experience afterwards, but the experience itself was not, you know,
There's a possible progression as well, though. So if you're not saying, oh, that's a bird song, if you're hearing the sound, but then there's a further progression that can happen, that if you, your words get tricky here. If you melt into the sound, then you'll reach a point where you are the sound. You become the sound. You can actually feel sound, not just hear it.
Yeah. It was almost like it's like it's really direct, but then, you know, there's still that habit of the mind has to come in and say something, and then I also had that yesterday. I had that 2D thing. I thought, oh, that's what they're talking about. It's like, I thought, what are they talking about? And I was like, that kind of, and I went, oh, okay. And then it didn't go away, but I wasn't, it's like you said about, just even when you said about pain, like if I don't focus on it, it's not there. It was a bit like, oh, that special effect, when I just stop focusing on that concept of 2D, then it just shifted to something else. Does that make sense? And so it was, yeah. But I didn't even look I didn't think in the bird thing. I wasn't really aware of the body that, so there might have been that it might have occurred, but it wasn't noticed by thought, sort of. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting when I talk about feeling the sound, that's also limiting in the sense that the awareness of the feeling is the thought thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how it gets, it kind of goes into the Jeff perspective of it's all just like a dream, and then you start going, oh, I kind of know what he's talking about now. There's still things I still realize I recognize I have attachment to certain people that is very kind of a body, thing that's feels strong. And there's like expectations that come in and out about things,
So if you become aware of those attachments, they change. So just simply being aware of their existence, it becomes a discovery again. You can kind of relax into what's happening and discover.
Yeah, and I see that tonight was really helpful with that, with those. It's just so amazing when other people talk about what they're doing. You're just like, it immediately becomes this, oh yeah. And it could even be something completely different of the way you describe it, but you have this, oh yeah. And that was sort of how it was for the attachment thing, because I was like, oh yeah, because as soon as I started to kind of look at it, it becomes lighter. It becomes, oh, that's just another thing that you hold lightly. The attachment, you don't get rid of it, you just hold it lightly. Or how Jeff was saying, he just watches it, or I can't remember what you said, Jeff, about enjoying the story, when you talk with people and you're enjoying the story that you're telling them about yourself, but it's not really about yourself, it's just the story you're telling. That bit was like, oh yeah, I had that experience yesterday as well. I went to a little dinner party and everyone was drinking. I didn't drink, and but I started getting the feeling of everyone that was drinking. So then then I'm telling stories, and I was just kind of going, oh yeah, this is fun. It was sort of like, yeah, you can tell stories and you don't take it, because I thought, because I'd never been a designated driver, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll be designated driver. And I realized it's a lot more fun than actually having a drink as well, because I never drink a lot. I have a glass of wine the whole night, but this time I thought, I'm not going to drink at all. And it was really, I had more fun and had enjoyment in telling the stories. It was, and it was the conversations, they weren't mundane, but it was almost like the experience of just doing that, just doing it. Or does that make sense? It's more like how Jeff said, you just enjoy telling story, but again, it's something quite light, and you don't take it with you after.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, yesterday, the only reason I bring it up is because I felt that relationship with what Jeff said, but I didn't bring it with me and go, oh gosh, I told the story. Oh, I shouldn't have said this, or I shouldn't have said that, or, or what does that mean anything? Or it didn't have that to it. So yeah, there's a definite lightness.
It's like you're just swimming in the middle of it all. Swimming in people.
Yeah, but then more in and especially when when you're with like kind, you really get it. And then sometimes when you're out in the world, like if I'm at work or something, but even at work now, I'm a bit more quite light about things. So, but it is like you said, Vince, you just become aware of it. And then it's sort of, and it, you know, it can rise and fall, that there's attachments and things, but then each time you're aware of it, it can get a bit lighter.
Yeah, just being aware of it kind of gives it permission to be what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, not that. Yeah, because even like I was watching something and it was and I saw these judgments. I started making judgments or whatever. Judgments started happening. And then there was you shouldn't judge people. Isn't that nice? That's not very nice, you know, to think that about that person. I thought, so, but it doesn't matter. It's like, it's not, it just happened. It's just happening, you know? And I was like, oh yeah. And I kept trying to do it. Thought kept trying to do it, kept trying to say, and I finally said, well, just turn it off then. If it's, you know, you don't have to watch it if that's what's happening and it's causing these things that are annoying. You know, you don't have to sit on the red ant. You can get off, if you get off, you're sitting on a red anthill, you don't have to sit in it, you know. You can move and go.
There's levels too, though. So you can see yourself judging. Judgment comes up.
Yeah.
And the first inclination is to say, "Oh, that's wrong. I shouldn't do that."
Yeah.
That's a judgment in itself.
That's exactly what I saw. I was like, wait a minute, this is, and that's like how just as he saw how ridiculous, you know, the mind was, he sees how ridiculous it was. So when he first said he first started seeing what he started seeing, and I thought, yeah, you know. And also it's also about where you focus. So instead of going into this battle over this, you know, very silly, unimportant thing, there's no reason to be watching it even. I thought, well, I can just turn it off. I don't even have to do that. You know, instead of continuing that sort of, so it was like a habit. It's like a habit that you say, you know. Yeah.
But again, just always that deeper level, that there's that thing underneath. And so you don't have to turn it off. Simply.
Yeah, I didn't even have to turn it off.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been, it was like, it's like, you know, when your seatbelt's beeping, I mean, things that should annoy me or shouldn't usually annoy people, it doesn't annoy me. You know, and then I go, oh, I have to put my seatbelt on, but it's not because of the beeping. It's just because, you know, I don't want to get a ticket or something. But you know how some people get in the car like, oh, that beeping, put your seatbelt on, I can't stand that beeping, that kind of stuff. It's like, oh. So yeah. But sometimes my cat can annoy me, but not as seriously as she used to. She meows a lot, but even that's okay. So yeah. And again, huh?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna say I went through a funny phase where I thought, oh, I can't relate to these personality-based things that obsess people, and you know, they tell their stories, and like I can see that it's all bullshit and all this stuff. So I went through that phase of being not so impatient, but actually like feeling disconnected, like I'm not I'm not like you. I feel like an alien. But that went away very quickly. I'm not sure why. It just vanished completely. Now I'm all in, you know, like I'm fine with I'm fine with all the stories.
Yeah. Well, then it's kind of a form of judgment, I think, in a
Right,
way.
right. I
It's
mean,
just it's more sneaky. But that happens to me sometimes. And I'm not sure, because people will tell me really, because I work in the trauma, and they'll tell me some really awful stories, and I kind of get this thing where there's compassion there, but I'm not worried about them. Does that make sense? I'm like, oh, what's this poor woman gonna do? She's been through so much. And then, but I'm listening, and it's almost like, and I don't know if this is good to do, and it's good this came up, because I can almost see what she's gonna have what's gonna happen with her next, sort of, when she told me the story. So I don't know if that's probably projection, but she was telling all this stuff, and I thought, and she kept going, oh, I feel so much better now, and I'm really starting to see stuff. And I thought, well, next thing's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of grief. I didn't say that to her, but that was the thought. So that's probably more thought construct. But it did it did take away that sort of stress of when you hear someone talking and you're like, oh, this is such a terrible story. It sort of made me say, okay, she's okay. Next, she's going to have a lot of grief, sort of thing. So I don't know if that's just thought. I guess that's just thought construct as well, but I don't know. But that's what seems to be the process when I hear people talking about their problems. I tend to kind of go, yeah, there's that compassion, but then there's there's not the worry.
Right. I mean, in the big picture, we're all going to go through a lot of stuff, or we have gone through a lot of stuff, and we will continue to go through a lot of stuff. And can't be otherwise. And adding thoughts that it shouldn't be that way are not helpful.
Yeah.
And
but I had a little, go ahead.
Back to that thing that suffering is optional.
Yeah.
And,
but at first, yeah, go ahead, Vince.
I was going to say, and Penilla talks about a really interesting one here, and that is that who are we to say that that person should not be suffering?
Yeah.
Who are we to take their suffering away from them when that suffering might be very well what they need to bring them into some better place?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, well, that's a thing. I mean, that's even a thing we do. I mean, that's part of what, because it's hard. There's training and there's certain things we're supposed to do in those situations, which, and they work. And some of them are very much that thing that Pranilla said. It's like, you have to let them sit with that. Yeah. You're not supposed to comfort them and go, oh, everything's okay. You have to just let them sit with it, because and extended further, that is what it is. So who are we to say? And then because I have to help people, and oh my gosh, what about I have to help. And then I thought, well, if someone asks me for help, then maybe that's a cue.
That's a different thing.
Yeah, cue from things to, okay.
Yep. So if we want to stop their suffering, we're most likely talking about ourselves. We're most likely saying their suffering makes me feel uncomfortable, and that's why I want to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how just listening can be changing for them.
Yeah. And I realized, because I used to talk a lot to the clients, and try to explain, you know, what's going on. But now I think the less I say, the more they're like, oh, you've helped me so much. I don't say hardly anything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's weird. All I did was just kind of go, oh yeah. Well, oh yeah. Or like, not, I don't know what I did, but then they'd be like, oh, that helps so much. Thank you. And they go out of the room. I'm like, wait, I didn't say anything.
Yeah. But there's a lot more happening than just that. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
by you sitting there and just being silent and present and all that, you know, if you've watched any of your friends maybe going through things or whatever, everyone that they're talking to that they're initially sort of complaining about or venting about, the people that are the hearers or that are listening, we also have that program built in response of, oh, you're in trauma, you're in distress. Let me present a solution or some platitude or something. Oh, well, it's just because he was a jerk or what, fill in the blank. So they're probably, especially if they're in trauma, you're probably not the first person they've talked to about it. So they're probably getting bombarded by all these things, which is the other people projecting, going, yeah, I want to make it better. And you're just sitting there being, you know, you're just like, okay, let's just whatever you got, just bring it in. So they like that, you know.
Yeah. And I think it's because they do all the groups. I used to work the daytime and now I work evening and night. And they come out after their groups. And then I used to think, oh, well, you know, the early shift is when I have to talk, because all that stuff would come up after they did the groups and they'd be venting and stuff. And I thought, okay, well, I need to talk to them and explain to them what's happening from their day. And, you know, it was helpful, but now I just kind of listen, or I just act really cheerful and kind of present for them. And that does a lot. And it's not an act, it's just I kind of feel that way. And it just seems to help more because, yeah, they have been getting people telling them stuff all day, you know, and then they've got their trauma telling them stuff all day, and their thoughts are telling them stuff all day, and they're repeating these stories over and over again. So, yeah. So
maybe they just want to know that someone cares enough to listen.
Yeah, just listening.
And it's your authenticity that they are responding to. It validates them, I think, something like that. Yeah.
You know, I think your initial response when you were saying that you felt very compassionate about them, but not a sense of, but also you sort of knew, like, I don't need to fix it. And what went with that of, how did you put it? I don't, you no longer have the thought of, well, what's this poor woman going to do, combined with, oh, I already can see what's happening with you. Right. I felt like when you said that was just very, very clear, because once we've done some of this work ourselves, we can see obviously so that there's identification with an issue, but the next stage is not providing relief. The next stage is you need, there's only, we've heard it a million times. There's the only way to the other side of something is straight through. And you know that they're just going to sit there and feel that it's inevitable if they want, you know, some true.
Yeah. Because a lot of times, when they come in, everyone's telling me, oh, you're going to feel so much better. You're going to start once you get clean, because it's drugs and trauma and mental health, and you're going to feel so much better. And I don't tell them that because I know the process. And it's like, look, you're going to, and depending on the drug they take, like if it's not heroin, if it's like alcohol or something, I go, well, you're going to feel better. But then when you start to do the work, you're going to feel really bad again. And so just get ready for that. And I don't like to put that in their head. So I say it very lightly, but because at first I thought, well, maybe I'm putting this in their heads and they're going to conceive, but they need to know that, because what will happen is they'll feel better the first few weeks, and then they'll start doing the work, and then they'll start to feel really bad, and then they can run away, they'll relapse. But I thought maybe if I warn them, and it is interesting. And that the first time I didn't feel bad about what someone said, that was this terrible thing that happened to them. I thought, what's happened? am I in that, am I disassociating? You know, am I being frozen? But then I realized, no, that it, you know, it took me a while. That happened much earlier before it started. It happened a few times, and now it's all the time. But at first it felt uncomfortable. You know, it felt like, but really what you're doing when you have that dispassionate compassion, you've stopped making the person looking at them as a victim.
Yeah.
You're not seeing them as a victim anymore, which is a terrible thing. And the same with your own self. You stop seeing yourself as a victim.
There is an energetic component to that labeling that we do, right? When we start seeing external things and I go, you're a victim, you're a predator, you're this, you're that.
Yeah.
Couldn't prove it in science, and it's probably in the woo-woo category, but what has appeared here is there's absolutely, when I've placed that judgment on someone, oh, this one's whatever, fill in the blank, there's something that happens there. And it could just be internal, but I think it almost, again, I hate to, I got to use some woo-woo descriptions here, completely changes the frequency that I'm radiating or transmitting, for lack of better words in the situation. So if you're just getting into, there's just this in front of me, it sounded like you were moving right into, you know, less identification and also that whole acceptance about just what is, right? And that's also going to have an effect on the environment as well. It can't not. So I think it's great.
Yeah.
And when you label anything, you start relating to the label, not the thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, now, right, I'm going to have to get a phone call in a moment. So I can leave you guys to talk, or we can wind up. What would you prefer?
I'm ready to go to bed. I'm pretty tired.
Okay. Well, we'll wind up then, eh? It's been another good one. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night, everyone.